What up, though? This is your boy Mike, the host of Wrestling from the 313, and we are live right now on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Today, my guest is an author. He is the author of the book For the Love of the Show, Part 1. And today, he is here to talk about For the Love of the Show, Part 2. Dr. Jeremy Housewright, thank you for joining the show. Welcome to Wrestling from the 313.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
No problem, no problem. And I see you're a busy man because in a couple of days you'll be on Professor Bear's podcast of Bear's Thoughts, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I got a couple other ones I'm showing up on this week, so it's been a busy week so far.
That's what's up. That's what's up. And shout out to Professor Bear and shout out to everybody over there at WSC and also. And make sure you check them out on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire Stick as well. So let's get things started and real quick just let everybody know what For the Love of the Show Part 1 is all about and what inspired you to write for For the Love of the Show Part 2 and how does it build on the first book?
Sure. Well, part one is right here. And part one was basically telling my story and the story of six other individuals. Some people out there may know a couple of the individuals in this first book. Izzy Moreno, who is well known through being involved with NXT years ago and showing up on Busted Open quite often when she was younger. I talked to her, so her story's in the first book, and a guy named Kurt Gannon who wrestles independently out of Kansas City. His story's in the book, and there's four other great stories as well. But essentially, the first book came to be because of my travels throughout the nation covering professional wrestling shows. I was fortunate and have been fortunate enough to cover a lot of WWE pay-per-views and AEW pay-per-views, not only in St. Louis, but Las Vegas and New York and places like that. And throughout my travels, I've met a number of really good friends from, guys that live in Canada and California. And really the only time we all get together is for wrestling shows. So that kind of gave me the idea of, hey, why not write a book about this? And I took it a step further by not just telling my story, but by finding six other fans who loved wrestling and having them tell their story about how their love of professional wrestling changed their life. And the reception from the first book was so good that I decided to do a second one. And really, the second one came to be because there was a story that I wanted to put in the first book. I just didn't have the time to do it. And that was the first chapter of the second book, which is about this group called the Wrestling Club out of Brooklyn, New York.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, so the teacher, his name is Victor Perry. He started this wrestling club at his middle school in Brooklyn. And it's really taken off. He's had a number of professional wrestlers actually travel there and talk to the kids and hang out with them. ESPN did a feature on them where Drew McIntyre and Sheamus went there for a day and hung out. And what really attracted me to his story was one, that I'm a former teacher. I was a teacher at the time. And two, Cody Rhodes actually paid for his students to go to WrestleMania 39 in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I was just about to mention that too. That was cool.
So I had tried to get together with Victor for the first book, and due to his time constraints, because he also does a lot of music stuff on the side, he he performs and makes his own music, and he's had a lot of success with that. So that takes up a lot of his time, and it was hard to get the permission of the school at the time to let me talk to him and tell the kids stories. So once all that got cleared, the first book had only been out for about 2 weeks, and me and Victor spoke one night for probably about 3.5, 4 hours on the phone, and I knew then that I had to write a second book and that they would be my lead chapter. So the thing that I wanted to do though with the second book is different from the first, because a lot of people think you have to read both of them, and you don't. If you haven't read the first book, you're not going to be behind or not know something going into the second book, because like I said, the first book tells the stories of not just myself but 6 other individuals and how pro wrestling has changed their lives. The second book is all about positivity and inspirational stories. I tell not only the wrestling club story, but I tell the stories of some kids who have overcome illnesses and autism because of their love of certain wrestlers, and how those wrestlers have actually reached out and met with those kids when they didn't have to do it. I mean, it was out of the goodness of their hearts. I tell the story of a young lady from Sacramento, California, who is battling stage 4 kidney cancer. And she has sort of, well, not sort of, she has adopted Kevin Owens' keep fighting motto. And at a show in Sacramento, he actually left the ring and climbed up into the concourse to meet her in the crowd, and hugged her and gave her a signed shirt. So, I tell Emily's story, and I tell talk about a guy named Marcus, who is a TV reporter for Fox 4 in Kansas City. And what's cool is I met Marcus back in 2022. I was actually shooting photos at a SmackDown in Kansas City, and he was sitting right next to me. And we just kind of hit it off. We became friends. I'm a big Kansas City sports fan, even though I live in St. Louis. I've been a Chiefs fan my entire life. And so, I stayed in touch with Marcus over the last couple of years. And then I found out that he was actually wanting to become a pro wrestler. So he actually pursued his dream to be a pro wrestler, and had his parents at a show where he came out to his favorite wrestler's theme song. And in his story, I talk about how when he was a kid, he used to imitate his favorite wrestler, and his parents used to play along with it. So it was kind of a full circle moment for him and his family at this show. And I talk about that, and it's just stories that will, I think, hopefully make people realize that there is a lot of positive, not just in pro wrestling, but the world in general today. So that's what I was going for with this second book.
Cool. And then to go back on the first book, you said that you had did one of the stories was on Izzy. That was the girl that was the Bailey fan, right? The big.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Izzy's the Bailey fan, and she was a tough one to get a hold of too, because she has a management company. So I had to go through them, and they were very protective of what she got involved with. So I had to sit down with them one day and go through everything I was going to ask. And as a journalist, that's one thing I don't like to do, is give my questions away before an interview. I feel that takes away the authenticity of an interview.
Yeah.
And I even doing promotion for my book, I never go to anyone and ask for the questions in advance, because I would never do that as a journalist. So that was strange for me. But I knew I wanted to tell her story. And I knew that she had quite a strong following from being on Busted Open and being involved with Bailey and NXT as a young girl. So it was
Yeah.
important to get that story told. And it turned out really well, even though I had to jump through some hoops to get it. Um, I'd do it again if I had to.
Cool, cool. Because she's actually wrestling right now, right?
Yeah, yeah. She last I heard she was doing something with, I guess, WWE ID or something like that.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, that's wow. That's big.
Yeah, so she just turned 18.
Okay.
And so she is able to sign a professional contract now. So, I mean, I think the hope is that she gets signed with NXT or AEW. I think her heart kind of lies with NXT, but
Yeah.
I know she's worked with AEW in the past doing some journalism things when she was younger. So she was
Okay.
always part of she did a lot of interviews in their media scrums and stuff like that. So she definitely has connections there as well.
Sweet, sweet. Yeah, because or I could even see her like even before she get to NXT, I could see her wrestling in on Evolve.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the sky's the limit for her,
Yeah.
honestly. Especially with her having a following already. That helps her out a lot. So it'll be interesting to see where she winds up. I wish her the best.
Oh yeah, most definitely, most definitely. So while you were doing the while you were writing or getting ready for the book for the love of the for the love of the sport for the love of the show part two. Sorry.
That's all
uh,
right. That's all right.
were there any interviews or insights in this volume that surprised you or changed your perspective on wrestling fandom?
So yeah, there was a profound moment for me personally with this. There were a couple, honestly. Um, the first one was in, I guess, near the end of November of 2023 when I was working on this. I had first started working on the book around then, and I don't know how I found this guy, but one of the stories in the book is over a gentleman named Nick Mason, and he is based out of the UK. And I had saw he had posted something, I think, on a group called Mania Club on Facebook,
Okay.
and he had posted something about um, using DDP yoga to drop a bunch of weight. So I thought, that would be a pretty cool story to include because he had mentioned that DDP had actually reached out to him. So I got a hold of him and we did a Zoom conversation one Saturday for, 3 or 4 hours. And his story really affected me personally. He had been a pro wrestler over in the UK, an indie
Mm-hmm.
wrestler, and he had had a lot of health issues as far as back problems, knee problems, stuff like that. And he kind of let himself go and he gained a bunch of weight. And he was kind of at his wits' end with everything and didn't know what to do. So he gave DDP yoga a shot after meeting DDP. And he said it started to work. And he had made DDP a figurine or something. That's what he does in his spare time. He likes to make like wrestling figurines.
Okay.
And he made one for Dallas and sent it to Dallas's mom. And DDP was so impressed with that he actually would call Nick and check in on him, free of charge. I mean, he didn't ask anything. He just did it out of the goodness of his heart because that's the type of guy DDP is.
Mm-hmm.
And, hearing Nick's story really struck a nerve with me because I was dealing with a lot of the same issues he was. And so it took me a little bit, but after writing his story and really thinking about things, January 1st of 2024, I decided to change my lifestyle totally. I worked out, I started working out every morning, eating right, um, really taking control of my mental health as well. And I've lost over 130 pounds since then.
That's good. Congratulations.
So, this book has a very special place in my heart just because it had, it meant that much to me. And, not just his story. I mean, there's, you know, one of the young guys I talk about in this book, teenager from Arizona, deals with he's got a rare disease to where he has a lot of flare-ups where he has to go into the hospital.
Okay.
And he also struggles with autism. And he's a huge Cody Rhodes fan. And Cody actually met with him and his family before his show, SmackDown, when they were in Arizona.
Okay.
And this young guy, he knows all the words to Cody's entrance music. And he actually literally left the hospital on a Friday afternoon and went to school to perform it in front of the entire school for a talent show.
Wow.
And just hearing the way that Cody has helped this kid's mental toughness and self-confidence, that really struck a nerve with me too, being someone who was around teenagers every day and who coached them and all that. And so that was another story. And of course, the wrestling club story I just think is very special because these kids, they go to school in the heart of Brooklyn, New York. And anyone who's ever been to Brooklyn knows it's not an easy place to survive if you don't
Yeah.
have much.
Yeah.
So, that club is really, in my eyes, keeping a lot of these kids from running the streets and getting involved in stuff they shouldn't be getting involved in. So, I don't know if Victor hears it enough, but he really is a big inspiration for a lot of those kids. And if I know he loves wrestling himself, but there's a bigger story than just starting a wrestling club when it comes to that story. Because I mean, he really has, I think, affected those kids in a way that has probably saved some of their lives. So, in my eyes, he is probably one of the most outstanding individuals I've ever had the privilege to talk with.
That's what's up. Yeah. And it's just cool. And like you said, a lot of these clubs are keeping kids out of trouble because it's like, it really don't seem like kids go outside and play. And then it's like nowadays, if they are outside, you really can't be outside because it's just everything's so violent. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So it's just like to have these wrestling clubs to bring all these kids together to keep them out of trouble. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and we forget that, you know, pro athletes don't have to be role models. And
Yeah.
as someone who, I've spent 20 years having the good fortune of working with a lot of pro athletes from, St. Louis and Kansas City and even beyond. I can vouch a lot of them are not the most upstanding individuals, so
Yeah.
and that's not all of them by any
Right.
means, but when you have that type of fame and money, it changes you as a person a lot of times. And I've seen that firsthand with a lot of pro athletes. So for these wrestlers who, a lot of them do have a lot of money and fame, um, to give their time to actually go and visit these kids, that says a lot about them. Guys like Big E, guys like Shelton Benjamin, um, Cody, Sasha Banks, or Mercedes Monet now,
Yeah.
Drew McIntyre. They don't have to do that, but they're just good-hearted people. So I credit them as well for keeping these kids interested in the club by doing things like that.
Yeah. And I could even go back to maybe 30 years ago when Bret Hart was when he went solo. And I think I don't know if he was the WWE champion or I know he was a champion. And I remember him going to I don't know if he was in Miami somewhere, but I know he went to the city, like the urban city, and all the
Right.
kids was just they were just so in awe, they saw Bret Hart, and one of the guys was like, "Man, I want to be your manager," or Bret was telling him like, "No, don't be a manager, be a wrestler." And he just like, "No, I just want to be around you," or something like that.
Yeah,
So that's just cool to see, what I'm saying, wrestlers giving back to the fans and, just the impact that they have on them. I think it's cool.
absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
So, what was the biggest challenge in putting this second book together compared to the first?
I think I'm dealing with that now. I want this book to reach beyond pro wrestling fans. And it's tough to do because I think a lot of people in society still have that skewed thought about pro wrestling that, it's obviously the first thing I always hear from non-fans is, well, it's fake.
Yeah,
And that always irritates me because I think, well, so is everything you watch on TV,
exactly.
uh, and
Yeah,
that's the first thing I always tell them. I'm like, well, what the hell are you watching that isn't fake? I mean, any reality show you watch is fake. I mean, they're all staged. Come on, and but so that I think has been the biggest challenge because it's hard to change people's minds, because they've thought a certain way for so long. And what was really cool though was I did a book signing at Barnes and Noble 2 Saturdays ago,
okay.
and I had a number of individuals who weren't wrestling fans purchase the book. Anyone from a teenage girl who wanted to have something to talk about with her dad, which I thought was really cool, to grown women who liked the cover of the book and they thought it sounded interesting, so they picked it up. So, you know, slowly but surely, I think it's going beyond just wrestling fans because I know the wrestling fans will be there.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I'm not worried about marketing to wrestling fans. I know I'll be able to do that, but to really have the success, especially with this book and the message that it portrays, I have to get it out to, you know, everyday fans of books.
mhm,
So that's probably been my biggest struggle is just being able to A, get the word out, and B, find a platform to reach those individuals.
yeah, yeah. And it's just crazy that people still like call wrestling fake. And I
Yeah.
think wrestling has done a good job by showing people like, hey, this isn't fake, with the reality shows like Tough Enough
Yeah.
and the LFG show that they just had on A&E. And
Mm.
even documentaries like what's that one, Beyond the Ring, that did
Yeah.
the documentary on the Mick Foley and the Rock match, and they
Yeah.
show how real it was, how the Rock was really hitting him over upside the head with a chair. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? And even the Hell in the Cell match, like they're telling people on camera, like, "Yo, this was not scripted. This was not something that we worked on during the match. Like, this was real life. Like, he could have died in that match." And it's like,
Hmm.
it's just crazy to me that people still don't understand that wrestling is not fake. Is it predetermined? Yes. But as far as what they do in the ring, you're not gonna get slapped upside the head with a chair. You're not, if you get hit upside the head with a chair, you're not gonna get up and be like, do it again. Or if
Right.
you get thrown through a table, you're not gonna get back up and be like, yeah, let's do it again. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So it's just like, it's crazy. Like I would dare anybody that say it's fake spend an hour in a wrestling school. They probably wouldn't make it.
No, you're totally right. I mean, I've talked to several MMA fighters who have been involved in pro wrestling. I'm trying to think of a couple that I've worked with in the past. King Mo is one of them,
Okay.
and I flat out asked him once, "What's more difficult? MMA or pro wrestling, and he laughed at me and said, "Pro wrestling by far." He goes, because not only am I watching out for myself, but I got another guy across the ring that I got to protect as well.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, make it look, like we're really hurting each other. When
Yeah.
in reality, we're not necessarily doing that. Yeah. So I wish that people would have more of an open mind at times. I really do. Because I mean, as big of a football fan as I am, I'd say most pro wrestlers are better athletes than any of the pro football players we watch on Sundays.
But you know what? I would definitely put pro wrestlers up there because, like I said, like a lot of people don't understand like the workouts they got to go through.
Right.
Like just starting off and warming up, they got to take a bunch of bumps, and I think they take like 100 of those at a time, like
Yeah.
just falling flat on your back,
Yeah.
and that surface is not nothing soft. Like
No.
I saw like the wood up under the mat or whatever, and it's like wow, like to fall on your back that many times on wrestlers are a different breed, and that's not saying that in a bad way, but it's like you gotta have a different type of mentality to be a pro wrestler. That's all I got.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I learned a long time ago that I equate pro wrestling to ballet, and people kind of laugh when I say that, but I had opportunity to interview some ballet dancers one time, and I remember going into it. I could have cared less about doing the story. I thought, man, you're never going to catch me at a ballet. It's
Yeah,
just the most boring crap I've ever seen in my life. Well, I went to one of their practices, and to see what they go through and to see their feet, it I can remember I saw a picture of Michael Jordan's feet one time, and it grossed me out how destroyed his toes were. And then I thought about it. I'm like, if you play NBA, you're playing 82 games a year, pretty much every other or every 2 nights, you're going in a game, and then you got practice. Your feet are going to be destroyed at the end of 20 years of playing. I can't imagine what LeBron's feet look like. Honestly, I would hate to see him. And you look at pro wrestlers, most of them, their hands are mangled, their fingers are mangled,
yup,
they don't walk right. Like that's to me, that's the most telling thing is when I go to these conventions and I see some of the legends, a lot of these guys can hardly walk. And
yeah,
it's to
yeah,
me, it's like, man, they are probably in more pain than we will ever know. And they would do it all over again if they could.
yeah,
So, that says a lot about the mentality of a pro wrestler.
definitely. The one thing I was thinking about though, because like you said, like if you look at a lot of the legends now that they're older and they are probably in so much pain, a lot of them can barely walk. I think about like the wrestlers that are wrestling now. I wonder what their health will be like in the future, especially now with so much technology, with keeping up with your bodies and just the regimens that you could do to keep it up. Like, do you think wrestlers now, and when they get older, let's say 20, 30 years from now, do you think they'll have the same effects as the legends now, or you think it'll be a little different?
I don't think it will be as bad as what you see now with, say, like a guy like, I don't know. I just saw Marty Jannetty
I
on
was
TV the
thinking,
other
I
day,
was thinking the
and
same. Yeah,
that dude can hardly walk. Like it
yeah,
hurts just watching him. So, I think, but then you look at a guy like Sabu, who, I got to see perform live one time, and it, you knew he was in a lot of pain, but he did it anyway. And
yeah,
it eventually led to an early death. And I just had someone the other night mention they would say Will Ospreay is the modern day Sabu. And I thought about it and I'm like, you know what? You're not wrong. the stuff he does is unreal. And, you know, I worry about him because he's a young guy. And I don't know if he'll make it past 45 or 50 the way he's going with the things he does. Now, technology's better, obviously. Um, and I don't think these wrestlers perform near as much as the guys did years ago.
That's
I mean,
true.
you got to remember 30, 40 years ago, these guys would perform 6, 7 nights a week,
Yeah,
twice on Sundays.
that's true.
Nowadays, I mean, a WWE performer maybe performs 2 or 3 times a week, if that.
Yep.
Traveling is a lot easier on them as well. A lot of them can fly or take big buses. They don't have to pile into cars together.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if you're sitting in a car for 6, 7, 8 hours at a time to travel, that takes a toll on you too. I mean,
Yeah.
that tears up the knees, shoulders, back. Um, there's a lot more, I think, programs that protect the wrestlers even from themselves, as far as like, you know, anti-drug testing, things like that. You don't see, obviously, you go backstage or in a locker room, you don't see bowls of pills like was rumored to be years ago. I
Yeah.
mean, a lot of these older guys, even Hogan has said, you'd walk in a locker room and there'd just be a bowl of Percocets waiting for you. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I've learned throughout the years that the opioids do worse damage to people than the hardcore drugs do.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think with those things, you're gonna see not only the wrestlers of today in a little bit better shape, but I think they'll also live a lot longer too than a lot of. I mean, I was thinking about it. I'm like, WrestleMania 3, there's not many guys from that card left. I mean,
That's true.
Hogan's around,
Steamboat,
Steamboat. I mean, there's a lot of them that are gone.
Jesse
So,
Ventura, Vince McMahon,
yeah, yeah. Um,
Cindy
and
Lauper,
yeah, Cindy Lauper.
Mr.
Yeah,
T,
yeah,
Cowboy
Mr. T.
Bob Orton.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, um, it'll be interesting to see what happens with some of these guys as they age. Now, the one I look at now is Batista. I just saw him today on a show, and he doesn't even look like himself. That
Yeah.
you know, if you're a wrestling fan, you wouldn't even recognize Batista, um, because he has, and he said he feels better now than he ever did when he was
Wrestling.
huge
Yeah.
in wrestling. You know, he does a lot of cardio now. He doesn't do the lifting that he used to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, he, you know, and he's Batista's in his 50s now. So he but he looks good, but he doesn't look anything like the Dave Batista that wrestling fans would know. But, you know, I'm happy for him because he's healthy and he's living a quality life, and a lot of these guys can't say that.
Yeah, definitely. When you said that, when you mentioned Will Ospreay, as a guy that you know kind of pushes it to the limit, another guy that I could think of that, and you'll probably you might agree with this too, Darby Allin.
Yeah.
Darby Allin is another guy. I think he's like this generation's Mick Foley. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like the stuff that he does, I'm not surprised that he's not on the shelf or he's not having career threatening injuries. Now I know he just climbed Mount Everest, and
Yeah.
he'll probably be coming back in the future, but he definitely is definitely on that top of the list of guys that take it to the limit. Like that move that he did in Sting's retirement match against the
Oh,
Young
yeah.
Bucks when he came through the ladder and went through the glass it was just like that was a little too much in my opinion.
There's been a lot of those with him.
Yeah.
He's definitely one that worries me. You know, some of the stuff that I see him do, it's just like, why? And that's my whole thing with AEW in general is a lot of the stuff they do. I don't understand what they're doing it for. It's just like, why? What does this help? How does this help your match? How does this help the storyline, whatever little storyline they have?
Yeah.
It, what's the point in it other than to get a bunch of social media posts from people, which you're not going to make any money off of that. So what's the post? What's the reason behind it? I don't know. I kind of and I guess I look at it as in two ways. I can understand why they do it, but then I also kind of have adopted like Kevin Nash's line of thinking that if you're not getting paid for it, why risk it? Why do it? You know? And that's been his biggest criticism of AEW is these guys aren't making any more money off doing these crazy moves. They're going to get paid what they get paid regardless.
Yeah.
So why are you going out there and doing some of these things? Like the one thing I really thought about was a few months back. It was Osprey and Omega, and they were both on these like giant pillars in the crowd. And
Yeah,
this
I
was
remember that. Yeah.
yeah, it
Yeah.
was a regular Wednesday night show. One of the
Yeah.
last times I actually watched a whole AEW show, unfortunately. But they both jumped off of it. I'm like, it was cool to see, don't get me wrong, but I'm like, why are they doing this? What's the point?
Yeah.
Because it didn't sell their story any further.
Right.
It's like, why would you risk that? And the it comes down to the owner has to step in at that point and say, hey, you guys can't be doing this.
Yeah.
Because I think WWE at a long time ago, back when like Foley was around, the things he did, those were pretty controlled regardless of how bad they looked. I
Mhm.
mean, he had to run that stuff past JR and Vince and probably Briscoe and whoever else was behind the scenes.
Yeah. Michael Hayes.
And if they would have had an issue with it, they would have said, no, you're not doing this.
Yeah, you're right.
It seems like Khan is just like, you guys can do whatever the hell you want. And that's a problem, you know. So it's a two-way street. I can understand why wrestlers do it, but it never fails. Every week I'll flip on Facebook or Instagram and I'll see some indie show from somewhere of some guy that no one's ever heard of doing some crazy stunt where he lands on his head or something and damn near
Oh
kills
yeah.
himself.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, why are you doing this? You're making
Exactly.
$100 off the show and you're gonna break your neck. Like, come on, guys.
Yeah. Definitely. But do you think AEW does that to kind of like see if we can get this wow factor from viewers and try to get them to switch over because they're doing these like type of stuff in matches, like having more blood and the moves that Darby Allin does from the ladder, jumping through glass. You think that they do that as a attempt to try to get viewers like WWE fans to watch them more?
I think it has to be. I don't know why else they would do it. Their audience is going to stick with them regardless.
Yeah.
And I was I went to the original All in Chicago, and I had never heard of most of those guys before because I wasn't a big indie guy.
Yeah.
I'm a self-admitted WWE guy from a little kid to now. But that night when I saw those guys, I was sold on all of them. They didn't have to go out and jump off of 20-foot ladders and do crazy junk. I would have watched Will Ospreay do any type of match. I would have watched Darby in any match. Just like I remember watching Cody that night, and I knew Cody from when he was young. And I never was a big fan of his because they never used him right.
Yeah, yeah,
But when I saw him wrestle Nick Aldis that night, I thought, yeah, Cody's going to be a star wherever he goes. And he didn't have to do any of that. So, but he has the personality. A lot of these guys don't have a personality really that they can sell. I mean, face it, Ospreay's a great in-ring guy.
yeah,
I love him. Probably one of the top guys in the world. But on the mic, it's kind of rough. You know, same with Darby. I
yeah,
mean, so they have to use those crazy stunts in a way. Where a guy like Cody has the personality where he don't have to go out there and damn near kill himself every match, you
yeah,
know, because people can relate to him. And some of that may be the WWE storytelling because, you know, when he was in AEW, it seemed like he kind of fizzled out, and that may because that may be because of AEW. I don't know. But I'm sure he had a little something to do with that. So, you know, I think according to, you know, wow factor, they want to shock people. Um, the enormous amounts of blood you see sometimes does shock me, I'll admit. And I'm hard to shock. I mean, not much surprises me or makes me cringe, but there have been some times I've turned on AEW and the amount of blood that I've seen in a match, I'm just like, oh my God, like what are they doing? You know, if it's a Mox match or whatever, it's just like, why so much blood? You know,
yeah,
but that's a whole nother topic in itself. You know, blood and pro wrestling, do they go together? Should they go together in our day and age? You know, so I think there's always a place for it, but
yeah,
there is a limit,
yup,
obviously, you know. But then again, it 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 will elevate certain matches, and I look at specifically the Tony Storm and Mariah May match.
yeah,
The blood in that match made it.
yup,
And I've been telling people, Mariah May, who just, you know, she just signed with NXT,
yup,
she's going to be a huge star in WWE. There's no doubt in my mind.
yeah,
She is going to be one of the biggest female stars that they will have on their roster within the next 2 years. There's no doubt in my mind, because she has that it factor. And if you put her with writers that know how to push her and use her,
hmm,
the sky's the limit for her. So, but that match, that made her career. There's no doubt in my mind. I mean, anytime I see her, I think automatically of that match. And same with Tony. And I was a Tony Storm fan before that,
yeah,
but I automatically think of that match. So yeah, I mean, AEW definitely. uh, I don't hate on it. It's hard for me to watch it at times, but I wish it would be better. I think that it has gotten better, and I think WWE has regressed somewhat here lately. So I think we'll see it kind of even out again in the next, you know, year or two.
definitely, definitely. And real quick, speaking of Mariah May, I think she's gonna be going. I think her name in NXT is gonna be Blake Monroe.
Blake Monroe.
Yeah,
You know, I
yeah,
always wonder how they come up with some of these names. The whole Jeff Cobb name now in WWE. It's a shame that he's already basically being buried, um, because he's
yeah,
another guy who's ultra talented. And
yeah,
eh, I don't know. I guess some of the times I think some of these guys are going to be huge stars and they miss. You know, I look at a guy like Bronson Reed, who I'm still high on, and I still think he'll be a monster star. But I have friends who can't stand to watch him. Um, you know, so I guess it's according to what people are liking at the time, you know. But because WWE's definitely had their misses as well with a lot of talent. It's not just AEW or, you know,
yeah.
other smaller promotions. They all miss from time to time.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. So let's switch back to the book. How did you choose which fans or personalities to feature in part two? And was there a specific message you wanted their story to convey?
Sure. Like I said, with part two, it was all about inspiring stories and stories that would motivate. And I've really started to focus on nothing but positivity. And the one change I've made in my life is part of getting healthy for me was blocking out all the negativity in my life, whether that be family members who, I didn't get along with. Um, I just don't talk to them anymore.
Right.
And that may be cold hearted, but the way I look at it is they weren't worried about me. Why should I worry about them? I need to be worried about me, number one. And so I've blocked out as much negativity as I possibly can. If there's something going on around me that's negative, I try to avoid it.
Right.
And it has changed my entire personality. Um, I'm just a lot happier. So when I was writing this book, I wanted the book to be nothing but positivity
Yeah.
and inspirational stories. So those individuals who I felt had that type of a story, I included them in the book.
Cool. That's what's up. So, what do you think make pro wrestling such a unique and lasting form of entertainment for its fans?
I think what causes or what has made pro wrestling last over the years is it's again, I go back to a ballet. It's like watching a violent ballet, and people love to watch violence. It's in our nature, and I know
Yeah.
I talk about being positive, but I tell you what, I love watching MMA because there is a art to it. It's not just two guys. If anyone thinks they can get in an octagon and beat someone up, they're mistaken because there is an art to it, there is a science to it, and you have to train constantly and push your body to the limits. And I think with pro wrestling, it's the same way. Anybody who thinks they're just going to be able to get into the ring and do what these guys do on a weekly or nightly basis, you have to put your body through hell to be able to tolerate some of these things. It's just like any other sport. I mean, playing football, you can't just go out there, put shoulder pads and a helmet on, no matter how great of an athlete you are,
Yeah.
and be successful. You have to train constantly. I looked at a training video of Tyreek Hill one time, that the stuff he puts himself through in the off season. And, as a person, I'm not a big Tyreek fan anymore, especially since he left the Chiefs. I don't really root for him, but I admire his athleticism
Yeah.
because I watched him do these leg training exercises that just watching him do it made me hurt. I'm like, I don't know how you could put yourself through this every day
Yeah.
doing what he does, and be able to walk afterward, much less catch 100 passes a season. You
Yeah.
know, so I admire. I have so much admiration for what these guys do in the ring and how they're able to perform and even use their platforms to help others. I see a guy like John Cena, who, let's face it, has never been the greatest in-ring performer there is. He was blessed to have that personality again that people liked.
Yeah.
And there were times when I loved watching Cena. There were times when I hated watching Cena. And that's the way his fan base has always been. You either love him or you hate him.
Yeah.
And but everybody respects him. And it seemed like when he went away to make, movies full time, people realized what they had lost.
Yeah.
And regardless of how rough it is to watch him in the ring right now, because he has lost a lot of steps. I mean,
Yeah.
the guy's almost 50 years old, so I try to cut him some slack, but he
Yeah.
is not what he once was. But I still respect the hell out of him because he still can draw your attention and he still puts people in the seats where, I always talk about Seth Rollins being that guy that he's great in the ring, but would he really sell out an arena? I contend he would not. I I personally don't think he would. Um, and there's a lot of guys like that who are great in the ring and they're superstars, but if they were put in charge or made the face of a company, I don't think they'd be as successful. You know, you look at a guy like Hogan back in the day,
Yeah.
he'd
Yeah.
sell out every show.
Definitely.
And but then you look at a guy like Randy Savage, he couldn't sell out a show.
Yeah.
And I know you mentioned Bret Hart. He was another one that had a tough time when he was the face of WWE selling out arenas.
Yeah.
And so you got to be a special person to be able to do that. And regardless of what I think of them as an overall performer, I still respect what they do day in and day out. And it's I try not to ever talk bad, or take away from a performer's performance because I could never do what they're doing, you know? So who am I to put them down for something? I may not like their performance or may be bored by it, but I'm not going to tell them they suck or that they
Right.
should quit because I could never do what they do. So,
No.
that's one thing that I've kind of learned over the years. I'm very I'm always very careful about how if I'm writing about a performer or if I'm talking about a certain show, I may put down the storyline,
Mm-hmm.
say I don't like the storyline, perhaps like I don't like John Cena's heel turn the way they did it. I mean, come on, Travis Scott's not going to beat up anybody who's a pro wrestler. I mean, come on now. Um, to me, and I'll be honest, to me, that ruined the entire WrestleMania. I mean, it really did for me.
Yeah.
Um, when he came out there, I'm like, okay, he's going to come out. He's going to try to get involved and they're going to knock his ass out of the ring. Well, to see him punch Cody and actually break his eardrum because he doesn't know how to throw a choreographed punch.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't blame Travis Scott for it. I blame whoever put him in that position. The producer of that show, whoever was the producer of that match, should have never let him do that. So I don't have anything against Travis Scott for doing it. I mean, if any of us were given the chance to get involved in a WrestleMania match, you can't tell me we wouldn't.
Right.
I mean, I would have ran down there in a second and did
Right.
whatever they wanted me to do, but
Yeah.
you can't blame him. But I am more critical of the storytellers, the people in charge, the writers, than I ever would be of the wrestlers, because I respect all of them, what they do. Um, a guy like R-Truth, everything that's going on with him right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had the good fortune to talk with him a little bit several months ago, and I just found him to be a very kind-hearted, down-to-earth guy, and um, I don't know if I buy that he was really released. And I don't know if I buy that he wasn't. I mean, it's hard to say.
It's coming out that well, of course they weren't renewing his contract, so
Right.
I don't know why they just say that they weren't renewing it and he was gonna be a free agent or something like that. But they were saying basically WWE was trying to call him all last week and he wasn't returning their calls, and it wasn't until Nick Khan stepped in and talked to him, and then that's how they came to an agreement and brought him back.
Yeah. If that's what happened, okay. I just I don't know, you know, and I'm not one of these guys that's going to argue. I see all these guys online right now arguing. It's a work. It's kayfabe. Blah blah blah. I'm like, who
Yeah,
gives a crap? It's great. It's great storytelling.
yeah,
Like him getting on there last night and cutting that promo and cutting his hair. I thought it was great. I
yeah,
don't know how much staying power he's going to have. Honestly, I don't. I do agree. Who was that last night that said in a year you may not hear, you may not even, or that was Cena, I think, in a year you won't even know who R-Truth is. I
yeah.
don't necessarily disagree with that, but that's how the WWE is in a way. I mean,
Mhm.
you're here today, you're gone tomorrow. I mean, look at Jey Uso. I mean, dropping that title last night
Yeah,
clean to Gunther. I mean, I honestly expected Goldberg to show up and cost Gunther the title
yeah.
because
That's what I kept hearing on the internet
yeah.
that was like possibly the setup or whatever.
Now it could still happen, I guess, because I'm sure Uso is going to get another shot because they're both, you know, they've both won a match against each other. So you're going
Yeah,
to have the rubber match at some point.
definitely.
Um, but he's a guy that, you know, he's an entrance. He's there to sell T-shirts.
Yeah, yeah,
He's not a great in-ring guy. He's adequate. Um, I never thought he would do as well as he has done. I thought without his brother
yeah.
that they both would really struggle, but he's really excelled, which good on him. He's proved me wrong. And like I said, for the kids who are their big money makers, it's a great shtick having
Mhm.
him come through the crowd and dance and, you know, do the yeeting crap. But as a 43-year-old adult, it's like, come on, man. Like, how ever, you know, being around when I was always around high school kids, I hear say stupid crap all day long. And I heard some of them saying yeet. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, man. Like, it really has become a cultural thing now, I guess. But I'm just like, I don't know. I guess I tried to think about back in the day when I was younger, some of the stupid stuff we'd say. Um,
Hey, we
so
was walking around saying "suck it," you know what I'm
yeah,
saying? Telling you know what I'm saying. So it's like that, you know what I'm saying? And
yeah, yeah.
I love it, man. And I've had the pleasure of like being at a wrestling show when he's been main event Jey Uso. It was actually the SmackDown after WrestleMania when Tama Tonga debuted in WWE when they took
Okay.
out Jimmy Uso. So one of the dark matches was Solo and Jey Uso, and this one he was coming through the entrance way. And I'm gonna tell you,
Oh,
his entrance is if 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 the show, if you've been watching like the beginning of the show and it was boring or you weren't feeling it, and he come out in the middle of the show, it's definitely it definitely gets you hyped, and it's definitely an
oh
energy
yeah,
booster.
yeah. I mean, they know what they're doing with the marketing of these guys, and
Yeah,
I think that's really what separates WWE from AEW.
I
Is
agree. Yeah,
WWE knows how to market their wrestlers. AEW has no flipping clue how to market their guys because I'll tell you, if you put the rosters up against one another, talent wise, AEW may have the more talented in ring performers
I agree.
than WWE.
I agree.
So you know it's not the in ring product that is struggling,
Yeah,
which means it's the creative. So that's my big thing with AEW. It's like you have nothing but a rich fanboy running the show who's got daddy's pocketbooks and free reign to do with what he wants, to buy who he wants. And
yeah,
then when he's tired of them, he just sits them off to the side and lets them rot. You know, it's just that's my biggest thing with AEW. And you know, and I hate to say that about Tony Khan because I got to sit in on one of the press scrums here in St. Louis, and he was super nice. I think he's goofy as hell. I mean, he's got a few screws loose, but if you're going to be an owner of a professional wrestling organization, you got to have some screws loose. I mean,
Yeah,
to deal with all the personalities. So, you
yeah,
know, it is what it is. I wish AEW nothing but the best. I hope they could turn it around.
yeah,
I would love to see them be able to fill a 10,000 seat arena again.
yeah.
Um, on a weekly basis, not just for a one-off pay-per-view, but
Right.
week in, week out. If they can do 10,000, then I would say they're back and they can actually maybe give WWE something to kind of worry about. But until then, they're nothing but a minor league in WWE's point of view.
Yeah. And the crazy part about it, like when AEW started, their viewers were like very, very consistent. They were
Yeah.
always at that 750,000, close to a million. They had some weeks where they would hit a million or maybe like under a million, but it was consistent. And it's like
Yeah.
now it's like drop
Yeah.
under 750,000. And it's like I think with AEW, and I always say this with wrestling, like WWE, they came up with storylines to get people talking. Like the Bloodline
Yes.
got people talking. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Main event Jay Uso got people talking. Seth Rollins and his new faction got people talking. John
Hmm.
Cena turning heel got people talking. So it's like they got to come up with a way that
Right.
can get people talking about wrestling and anticipating on watching Dynamite the next week or Collision or whatever. Like so,
You
sort of
know,
like with what back in the day with the Monday Night Wars. That was the one
yeah.
thing with WWE and WCW. They kept people wanting to watch
Hmm.
what's gonna happen the next week. In WCW, it was always who was gonna be the newest member. When was Sting gonna come from the rafters? Who was Goldberg gonna be? In
Right.
WWE, it was uh what Stone Cold gonna do to McMahon this week? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
What The Rock is gonna say? What DX is gonna do? So I think, and I just think that's just with wrestling. Period.
Yeah.
If it ever is gonna get back to that point of how it was in the Monday Night Wars, and I don't think it ever get back to that point again because that
No.
was like that was a golden era. But if they can get people talking again, mm, people might start watching again. But I think another problem with it is with them putting all these shows on streaming services, not everybody has access to streaming services, whether it's money,
Yeah.
whatever. You know what I'm saying? Back in the day, it was just cable and regular TV, but everything's coming on streaming services now.
You're totally right. I think the streaming may not be as successful as these companies think.
Yeah.
Um, I look at, but you mentioned when you were talking about AEW, I think back to the night Swerve won the title. I was there. It was here in St. Louis,
Oh, sweet.
and I'm a huge Swerve fan. I think the guy is ultra talented, and I was highly critical of WWE for releasing him.
Yeah.
I thought that was the stupidest move they ever made.
Yeah.
Um, but AEW dropped the ball with him. I mean, that the story of him winning that title should have been all over the place.
Yeah.
He was their first African American champion.
Yeah.
There was not a mention of that at all. And I don't know if Tony was afraid to mention that or he just didn't think about it. Um, you know, being fired from a company and then becoming a champion of another company, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
mention. It's like you have all these storylines literally in the palm of your hand and you're just ignoring them.
Yeah.
And it really did Swerve an injustice. Um, you know, he's still been able to maintain, a top tier level guy for the company, but it's by no help of the company.
Mm-hmm.
It's all him.
Yeah.
I haven't seen them market his Iverson shoes at all.
Yeah.
You know, I'm
Yeah, that's
I'm a
right. Yeah, he do have some
I'm a sneakerhead. I got a pair right over here, man. I got a pair. I don't even watch AEW hardly at all, but when I Swerve was putting out a pair of AIs, I'm like, I got to get those just because I like Swerve. I never pull them out of the box. I don't know. I mean, they're kind of goofy looking,
uh,
but they are cool. I mean, if I was a kid again, I'd wear them,
Yeah,
you know. But it's like no word. There's no mention of it. It's like you have all these golden opportunities in the palm of your hand, and you're just letting them go out the window. And again, that's not the wrestler's fault. That's that's your creative. So whoever is in charge of creative in AEW, if it's Tony Khan, he needs to be held accountable. If it's people he's put in charge, he needs to put some new people in charge, because that's the problem with that company right now. It's not the performers.
yeah, I definitely agree. Real quick, want to give a shout out to Crander Q from the Friends of the Square Circle podcast. He just left a question: would you buy a Crander Q shoe?
Maybe if he makes it a pump, I'd buy it. I think that'd be sweet. I think somebody needs to bring back the old Reebok pumps, man.
You know what? They actually came back a little while ago because they brought the D Browns back.
Oh, okay. So D Brown was doing one of them. Okay.
Yeah, because
That's cool. Yeah, man. Those were we were just I was in the office the other day talking to someone about them. They didn't know that they still made them. I said, "Yeah, you can still find the pumps around." I said, "I
yeah,
think like the old store from the mall, Journeys, sells them,
I
and
think so.
you can find them there." But yeah, that's you know, that'd be cool if you could get a superstar to put his name, like, you know, I'm a Pacers guy, so um when I saw Halliburton is coming out with a new shoe, but it's a pink Puma, I
Yeah,
was like, oh man, I don't know if I could rock a pink shoe now. I don't know about that, but yeah, I we'll see. I'm gonna have to see it in person uh before I make that decision. But yeah, I mean, I would like to see more wrestlers get shoe deals. You know, there was a big rumor that Reigns was gonna have a Jordan shoe.
yeah, yeah.
And I think the idea got nixed by, I think it was the Jordan company decided not to go with it,
Wow.
which is a shame because I think that would have been a pretty sweet shoe,
Yeah, yeah,
you know, especially if the bloodline were still going strong. That would have been a pretty awesome shoe to see.
yeah. And I
So
think back a couple years back, they had like a WWE had a deal with Puma,
yeah,
and
they did.
Sasha Banks had a shoe. I think Kofi Kingston had a shoe, and I think the Undertaker might have had one too.
You're right. You're right. Yeah, they did. You know, Puma just wasn't a huge brand, I guess, really. I mean, I don't know. I don't I don't talk to the young people enough to know like what shoes they think are cool anymore. I mean, I think everybody still loves the Jordans.
Oh yeah, that's
I don't think you'll ever see Jordans go away.
nah,
Um, Even
nah.
the kids like them, you know, because their dads grew up with them. You
Yeah,
know, hell,
yeah,
some of their grandpas grew up with them. So you
yeah,
know they still respect the Jordan brand. But I think Puma, I think like soccer players like Puma.
yeah,
So, you know,
yeah.
if you could get that crowd, pro wrestling and soccer, I don't know if that's a good mix or not, but if you could reach those kids, you might have something there with Puma. But I think I had a couple pairs years ago, but not for a long time.
So has writing let's switch back to the book real quick.
Yeah.
Has writing these books changed the way you experience wrestling yourself, either as a fan or as a journalist?
You know, I thought it would, but I'll tell you what has changed the way I experience wrestling is the ridiculous prices that WWE is trying to charge or is charging now.
Oh
Um, and it was kind of,
man.
you know, I've always been fortunate to get credentialed for any WWE show I wanted to attend, probably in the last 7 or 8 years.
Cool.
And when they came to St. Louis for Backlash, it was refreshing to hear from so many of the media members from like New York and LA, the places where they got a lot of money usually, you know. I mean, because you can charge more for a show in New York or LA than you can in St. Louis, Missouri.
Yeah.
But even the media there was very critical of the ticket prices. And I was happy to hear that because they are starting to price out their longtime normal fan who may not make an astronomical amount of money.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a shame. I mean, a father couldn't take, and I don't have kids, but a father is very fortunate if he can afford to take 2 or 3 of his kids to a WWE show anymore.
Yeah.
And that's a shame because to me, that's what wrestling is all about.
Yeah.
Going to the live shows. That's how I became a fan. As a 7-year-old kid, my grandfather would take me to house shows. And we would pay $5 to sit up top in the nosebleeds to watch Hulk Hogan, to watch, Ultimate Warrior. And we would just laugh all night. And those are some of the funnest times I ever had. But it'd be hard for a grandfather to take a grandson or two to a show anymore because the prices are so ridiculous. And that's a shame. And it all started when TKO bought them.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it literally sickens me to watch WWE, even though I love it, but to see all the advertisements on the ring. I guarantee you'll see wrestlers with ads on their trunks shortly.
Yep.
And that it's just they are nickel and diming people. And I got a perfect example. So when I cover shows, they usually give me a ticket right next to the hard cam on the one. I got a good view to shoot photos.
Mm-hmm.
Bring my camera and I shoot photos. At the last show, they put me all the way up top. I mean, as high as you can go in the arena, in the press box, and made me shoot from there because they said they had no tickets to give to press in the hard cam section.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, TKO is nothing but bloodsuckers.
Yeah.
And they want to get every penny out of people they can get. And that really leaves a bad taste in my mouth. And it's gotten hard for me to sit through WWE shows. If I wasn't as big of a fan as I am, there's no way I could do it because it really, really bothers me that they are doing what they are doing to WWE. And as much as I disliked Vince and the way and the horrible things he did to not just women, but some of the talent, at least he kept the shows affordable for families.
I agree.
And to me, that's the biggest thing about pro wrestling is, most young fans don't become fans because they just like it. They become fans because their grandpa or dad or someone they know that they can share that with and go to the shows with is a fan. So you are pricing those kids of today out. And yeah, they may be making record sales at every show. I that always drives me nuts that Triple H gets up at every press conference. This is a record show. Well, yeah, no crap, because you're charging $800 a ticket.
Right.
No wonder you're making records.
Yeah.
It's like, when is someone going to have the guts in one of those press conferences to stand up and ask Triple H, do you worry about pricing the common fan out of your shows?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if these wrestling journalists were that serious about the art of wrestling and the sport of wrestling, why isn't any of them asking that question? It's because they're scared to, because they're probably like, well, we'll get our credentials pulled.
Yep.
It was hard for me to go as a press member to Backlash because I was literally so mad about them pricing tickets so high.
Yeah.
It's going to become more of a problem. That's my prediction. And it's a shame because nobody seems to be bringing that to WWE's attention. We talk about it, but I haven't heard anybody mention it to WWE yet. So, if any of the press people are watching out there, I encourage you to ask Triple H that at the next press conference.
Yeah. And you know what? Me being these last 10, 11 years, being somebody that went to a lot of the shows that came in my area, being in Detroit.
Mhm.
Before they tore it down, I would go to the shows at Joe Louis Arena, and we would always, me and my wife, before we got married, we were dating, and we would go to the wrestling shows, and we would literally get floor seats for 125.
Yeah.
Like the first 3 to 5 rows were always like those VIP where
Right.
you could come in early, meet the wrestlers, sit in those special chairs and stuff. But after those first 3, 5 rows, everything was 125, and the further back you got, the tickets were cheaper.
Yeah.
I look at the because they WWE supposed to be coming to Detroit in July. I
Mhm.
looked at those ticket prices, and you basically got to sell drugs to get some of them
Yeah, man.
tickets. For real. Like it's just like, wow, like a floor seat in row 7 was like 300, 350, close to $400.
Yeah.
And it's just like, even the seats like way back were expensive.
Right.
And it's just like, who gonna be able to go to a show and take their kids and have a good time? And that's not even including the merchandise that you want to buy while you at the show,
Right.
the food
Right. Yeah,
that
because
you
the
want
merch
to
is at
buy.
least $10 higher there.
Yeah. And then the food that you want to
Yeah.
buy at the
Yeah.
shows. Like, you know what
Right.
I'm saying? So it's just like, they got to figure it out, because from what I heard, and I don't know if this is true, that TKO possibly is losing money off of
Mhm.
buying WWE, and they probably raising the prices to try to get that money back.
Yeah.
That's a possibility, but at this expense, like, who gonna be able to go to a show in a minute? They gonna have to have the screen like they did at the Thunderdome, because nobody
Right.
gonna be able to go.
Right. No, you're totally right, man. It's it's going to become a problem, and it is a problem, and I think it's just going to get worse. Because I honestly don't believe TKO cares.
And
As long as they're lining their pockets, they don't care.
yeah,
And it's the same way in pro sports. People always say, well, if you want to give a team the message that you're unhappy with them, the best way to do it is to stop going.
yeah,
That's going to be the same way with the WWE show. Unfortunately, people are going to have to stop going,
yeah.
you know, and once that starts, then they'll wise up.
And then that's just another thing with WrestleMania, that them having it in Vegas this year might have been the biggest mistake, because it's like, what city is gonna outdo Vegas? Vegas is already a city making money just off the
Yeah.
gambling and the hotels and stuff like that. And now you add WrestleMania, that's more money. Like, you knew New Orleans wasn't gonna top Las Vegas. And I think that's gonna hurt a lot of the cities that want to have a WrestleMania. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, man. And it's a shame because I've been to two WrestleManias in New Orleans, and I've been to a SummerSlam in Vegas, and I will tell you that New Orleans is my favorite city to go to a WrestleMania in, because it's so easy to get around.
Yeah,
And I don't drink. That's the thing. Like, we go down on Bourbon Street and I just walk around and look at all these crazy people, acting stupid and getting hammered. But I have a good time. Um, but you can walk everywhere. Like, I can literally park at my hotel and walk the entire weekend. And that's even if I want to go to indie shows.
yeah.
Vegas, though, for one, the Raiders stadium sucks. Anything the Raiders do is terrible to begin with. There's no parking. You have to, if you do park around the stadium, you're paying $100 or $200 to park pretty far away on the street. Um, and then even getting around from the stadium back to the strip is a nightmare. So logistically, it's not a good setup.
Yeah.
And I didn't go this year because of that. Because when I went to SummerSlam a couple of years ago out there, just getting around was terrible.
Mhm.
And I didn't want to waste my time or money because Vegas is a very expensive city,
Oh yeah. Oh
you
yeah.
know. And if you're not going out there to gamble, you know, you're gonna be let down a little bit. You know, now I still have a good time when I go out there. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a big gambler either.
Yeah.
I like to walk around and see the different, you know, casinos and stuff. Because heck, even just seeing some of those are pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But it's just not a, and it's not a great city for kids. It, I
Oh
mean,
no.
what are you gonna leave Junior in the hotel while you go drop his college, you know, inheritance
Right.
on the slot machines or you know playing blackjack or something? So I don't know. I get why they're doing it there. Like Triple H says, it's the entertainment capital of the world, which I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I always thought New York or LA
Oh
would be
yeah.
considered the entertainment capitals of the world, but you know, it, even SummerSlam this year's outrageously priced.
Yeah.
You
Yup.
know, at I think it's at Giant Stadium or whatever.
Yup.
So, you know, it they're just they're gonna back themselves into a corner eventually. People are gonna wise up and be like, we're not gonna go anymore. Um, you're starting to see that a little bit with NFL. People are tired of paying high prices for tickets, and they're opting to stay home because it's more enjoyable to watch the game from home.
Yeah. That's true. And Crandy Q had mentioned in the comments, he was saying that WrestleMania, Vegas could possibly be the permanent home for WrestleMania.
I've heard
And
that.
that's messed up because, you know, they done made deals with Indianapolis.
Yep.
Indianapolis was supposed to have WrestleMania. It was possible Minnesota
Yep.
have a SummerSlam or WrestleMania. So it's just like, now that you think about it, was having it in Vegas a good idea because it's like no other city is really gonna top it. You know, it's a big city where a lot of money is spent, and you add wrestling on top of that, like nah, that might have been a bad idea because I think, like I said, it just hurt all the other cities that don't get big events. They
Yeah.
might not have that chance again.
Right. Absolutely. I know, you know, a big driving force behind the Tennessee Titans new stadium is they were told they were going to get a WrestleMania.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, hey, WrestleMania in Nashville, Tennessee would be off the chain. Let me tell you, Nashville is a great city to go.
I've never been there. I definitely like to go there. Definitely like to go there. So, what do you hope readers take away from For the Love of the Show, For the Love of the Show Part 2, especially newer fans or those outside the wrestling community? Uh-oh. Hey, Jeremy, I think your mic went out. Is it on mute? Having some technical difficulties. Give us a second. Granny Q just left a comment. Yeah, I should. Yeah, they definitely should come to Minneapolis. They haven't had many big events there in Minneapolis, if I'm correct. I could be wrong. We're gonna try to get Jeremy back on. Had a couple of But he's back on.
All right, how's that, man?
Yeah, I hear you now. Cool,
All
cool.
right. Yeah, my mic quit working, unfortunately. My mic I was using.
Oh, okay, no problem, no problem. Hey, that's one of them things that happen when you go live. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
hey, it's all good. Did you
Yeah, man. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. Oh, no problem. No problem. It happened to me. I think last week my feed went out, and my guest had to keep talking until I got back on. So hey, it is no problem. No problem.
Gotcha. Yeah, but as I was saying, I want people to realize that, you know, they can use any type of platform to draw inspiration from and to overcome whatever they're dealing with, whether, it doesn't have to be pro wrestling, obviously. It can be any type of sport. It can be, a career change, anything like that. But if the individuals you read about in this book can do something great like they've done, truly anybody can. And I think that's the message that I want to convey with this book.
Definitely, definitely. We got a comment from John from the Sports for You podcast and the Sports for You Wrestling podcast. What up, though, John? Appreciate your comment. Um, Dr. Jeremy, I appreciate you coming on. Definitely had a great conversation. Before we get up out of here, was any last words, any shout outs, any plugs?
I mean, you can find me on, let's see, Facebook, Instagram, uh, Twitter, or X, whatever they call it now. Uh, you can find me on my website, jeremyhousewright.com. You can get the book on Amazon, both books on Amazon, and you can get the second book pretty much anywhere. That's another thing that was cool about the second book. I was able to get it produced through ingramspark.com, which then puts it into thousands of stores around the country. So that's given me a leg up on the first book as well, because the first book's just strictly through Amazon. So, and then if you want, if you don't want to go through any of those, reach out to me via Facebook or jeremy.housewright@gmail.com. I'm running a special now. You can get the first and second book for $20 shipped, and I sign both of them.
Cool. That is
So yeah.
Yeah, make sure y'all get that book. Like I said, Jeremy, I thank you for coming on. Appreciate it. You're welcome to come back on anytime in the future. So once again, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. It was a great time.
No problem, no problem. Before I get up out of here, just want to thank everybody that watched the show on either YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch. Thank you for everybody that left a comment. And as always, you can catch Wrestling from the 313 on YouTube. We're getting close to 5,800 subscribers, so happy about that. We just hit the 2.6 million views mark on our YouTube channel, so thank you for everybody that's subscribed and watched. And you can also catch me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X/Twitter. Catch me on the Wrestling Society Network's website. Go to the podcast room. You'll see a whole bunch of great podcasts. Click on Wrestling from the 313. Check out some past episodes and check out all the other wrestling podcasters on there. Everybody's out here on the grind and just talking about wrestling. It's a big community, and support your wrestling support your wrestling podcasters as well as your independent wrestlers always. So for my guest, Dr. Jeremy Housewright, I am Mike D, host of Wrestling from the 313. I will see you tomorrow with another episode. Until then, have a good night, and we are out.